We're live now, members. Good morning, members, officers, and any members of the public who are viewing the live stream of this meeting, and welcome to this meeting of the Employment and Staffing Committee. My name is Sally Ann Hart, and I am the chair of the committee. May I ask that anyone joining us remotely today to keep their cameras and microphones off unless they are addressing the committee. Committee members present in the chamber, I will now invite each of you to confirm your title and the ward that you represent. As I said earlier, my name is Councillor Sally Ann Hart, and I am a member for the Melbourne ward. My vice chair is Councillor Anna Bradnam.
Hello everyone, I'm Councillor Anna Bradnam and I'm one of the 3 members for Milton and Waterbeach ward.
Councillor Sunita Hansraj.
Hello, I'm Sunita Hansraj and I represent Histon, Impington and Orchard Park.
Thank you very much. I understand that Councillor Mark Howell is being substituted by Councillor Heather Williams today.
Morning Chair, morning everyone. Heather Williams, I represent the Mordens ward and substituting for Councillor Mark Howell today.
Thank you. Councillor John Williams.
Morning committee, I'm Councillor John Williams, I'm the lead cabinet member for resources. I also represent Fen Ditton and Fulbourn ward.
Thank you. I can confirm that the meeting is quorate. We have some officers in the room with us today, starting with the Head of Transformation, HR and Corporate Services.
Good morning members, Jeff Membry, Head of Transformation, HR and Corporate Services.
And the HR Service Manager.
Morning members, Helen Cornwell, HR Service Manager.
Also we have Lawrence Damery-Homan and Patrick Adams from Democratic Services. And I understand we'll be joined by presenting officers online today. I think they'll be joining us shortly. So members, first item on our agenda today is apologies for absence. Lawrence, can I ask if there are any apologies for absence today, please?
Thank you, Chair. Just received one apology for absence, which was from Councillor Mark Howell today.
Thank you. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Do any members have interest to declare in relation to any item of business on this agenda? If any interest subsequently becomes apparent later in the meeting, please would you raise it at that point? Councillor Heather Williams.
I don't think it's definitely non-pecuniary, but I was involved in campaigning for IVF to be given on the NHS. So obviously on the fertility treatment, I have a lot of experience, but I don't have an interest, if that makes sense. But I thought it was best to be upfront about that.
Thank you. Yeah, that's appreciated. Thank you. Any other declarations? Oh, I see now we do have some officers online. Would they like to introduce themselves? Emma, I think I can see your... I don't know what you call that.
Maybe when it comes to
Hello, sorry.
Hi, Emma.
Hello, I'm Emma Weston, HR Advisor. So I'm here to present the resolution policy and the fertility policy today.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. And Chloe?
Hi, I'm Chloe Whitehead. I'm a HR business partner and I'm here because we have several HR items, so I'm here to support.
Thank you for joining us. I don't think I've missed anybody else. No? Okay. Right, members, just moving on to the minutes of the previous meeting. This was held on the 15th of September 2023 and are here for approval today. Are there any members that want to make any amendments or any comments on those minutes? Sorry. Yes, Councillor Heather Williams.
Just on page 6, with the paragraph that starts Councillor Williams, it then goes on preferred to work from and how attendance. I think it's meant to be work from home, because it doesn't quite make sense.
Sorry.
where
Page 6.
there are 2 elements. You're on item 4.
Item 4, second from last paragraph.
Yep.
On the second line, members of staff prefer to work from, and then it goes and how attendance. It should be work from home.
Thank you. Can that be noted, please? Yes. I've also got a just a comment on that item 4. Just there's an abbreviation in there before that abbreviation has been explained. The CMT with CMT colleagues.
Yes.
Yeah, if that could be in full. Thank you. Any other comments on those minutes? I raised one, and I'd like to thank Patrick for looking into the minutes. The penultimate paragraph on item 5 didn't make any sense to me, the way it was written. Councillor Dr. Richard Williams suggested that the reported savings of 550,000 through replacing agency staff with permanent employees might be misleading because as posts, the focus of attention were field others might become. So it didn't make sense to me. I did ask, and the minutes have been, or the meeting has been reviewed, and the recording there, and I'm going to suggest that the words replaced with Councillor Dr. Richard Williams suggested that the reported saving of 550,000 through replacing agency staff with permanent employees might be misleading because other agency staff were being employed as other permanent posts became vacant. If that's okay with members. I'm mindful that Dr. Richard Williams isn't here today, but I would like to ask that we have that and circulated if there are any comments that come back from that. So, members, with those comments, can I take approval of these minutes by affirmation? Agreed. Thank you. Okay, members, moving on to item 4 on our agenda. This is the review of the 4-day week, and we're being asked to note this report, which Jeff will present to us, although I believe Councillor John Williams, did you want to say something beforehand?
Thank you, Chair. Before I pass over to Jeff, I just wanted to say that this is the first report that this committee has had on the 4-day week. It's a very encouraging report, and it makes mention of the key performance indicators in Q1 of this year. We have since this report was published, we have now published our KPIs for Q2. And I'm very pleased to say that they very much continue that trend in Q1 of improvement in our KPIs. So I just wanted to draw the committee's attention to that you should also be looking at the latest KPI published, which were for Q2, and you'll see that they continue the good performance in Q1. But I'll now pass over to Jeff.
Thank you, thank you. I'd just like to note that Councillor Richard Stobart has entered the chamber. I'll give you a moment to settle yourself, Richard, before introduce yourself. But thank you for joining us today. Jeff.
Thank you, Chair. Members will recall that in September 2022, Cabinet authorised the trial of a 4-day week, primarily to try and combat the challenges that we and other local authorities are having in recruiting staff to fill our vacancies. Members might recall that we often found that we had 20% of our vacancies that we weren't able to fill, and some months even more than that. When granting the approval for the trial, Cabinet asked that Employment Staff and Committee receive update reports, and this is one of those update reports. In the report to Cabinet, as well as mentioning the fact that we needed to address the issues around recruitment, the report identified some of the potential benefits that had been seen in the 4-day week trial in the private sector in this country and in other countries, and suggested that those benefits could potentially be delivered in the trial. So what this report does is look at those potential benefits and look at the available evidence to see whether or not the trial seems to be delivering upon those. The evidence breaks down into a number of different areas. The first one around health and well-being, where the report identified that as well as the improved employee health and well-being, 4-day weeks often produce more motivated employees and reduces sickness rates. Clearly this was particularly important because a lot of trials on productivity show that people who are well motivated, well rested and in good health are significantly more productive than average. So it's something we were wanting to see achieved through our officers. This was measured for the trial both by statistics on sickness and also a staff welfare survey, which was taken before the 4-day week was announced, and then again after the first initial 3-month trial had been completed. In 3 of the key areas around health, motivation and intention to leave, members will see from the colour-coordinated part of the report showing the dashboards of the 2. My apologies, on page 4 and 5, 3 and 4. We'll see that in those areas, when the first welfare survey was taken before the 4-day week trial was announced, our performance in those 3 areas were below the benchmark average, although not significantly below. But since the trial has been in place, after the first trial was completed, we've moved either to be above average in those areas or significantly above average, particularly the case in terms of productivity and intention to leave. The next area that the report to Cabinet highlighted was the fact that the 4-day week would lead to better retention of staff and improved recruitment. Again, this is an important area because giving our residents and our businesses consistency in the people that they're dealing with makes it a lot easier for people to access services. A really good example of this is around a developer who might have a major planning application. When we're having trouble retaining or recruiting planners, it means that that developer might have to deal with 2 or 3 different case officers over the period of their application, which makes it difficult to keep that continuity and build the relationship necessary. Whereas once we've got a permanent employee in place, it allows that to happen. The same can be said for people who are potentially vulnerable to homelessness. Having one person that they can deal with consistently gives a better service. As members will see from the report, we've got an improved retention, a figure of 36%. We've shown that, again, the intention to leave has moved from us being below average to being in a position where we're well above average for the benchmark. And there's some information in there about our success in recruiting. I think particularly noticeable is that we've been able to bring in, I think it was 97 external applicants into the authority over the period of the trial. It is noticeable that, particularly in some of those areas where it's really challenging to recruit, that we're having success in recruiting where some of our neighbours are finding that difficult and having to offer additional incentives. On productivity and performance, our main measure of productivity and performance is through our KPIs, which are reported quarterly. What we've seen in terms of the KPIs is that our performance has been at least maintained. The variances that we have seen are those that we were seeing generally before the 4-day week was introduced. KPIs always vary depending on level of demand and circumstances. Many of our KPIs have actually improved, and both compared to the previous year and in terms of the average since the KPIs were introduced in 2016. So performance has been at least maintained. Another area that was mentioned in the report to Cabinet was the fact that by filling more vacancies, we'd be able to reduce our dependence on agency staff who are covering vacancies. Obviously, when you recruit agency staff, you pay a premium, particularly for those areas where there's a significant shortage. Because it was the start of the pilot, and of course we didn't have actual information, we've until now had to do projections on savings and forecasts. And the latest is shown in the report. It does have to be said, though, that projections are just projections. We didn't know at the start, for example, we knew how many hours we contracted agency staff for, but we didn't know whether they were going to work those hours or if they'd go sick or if they would take leave. We didn't know how the wage inflation for agency staff would vary compared to the wage inflation for our own staff. We didn't know which posts would be vacant and whether they'd attract market factor supplements. There were a lot of areas that we didn't know. So those figures are projections. We are now, however, 11 months into the trial. So we're in a position where the finance team is starting to be able to collect information to provide actual figures. And I know that's something that members are really keen to see. So but the next time we bring a report to you on the 4-day week, we should be in a position to give you those actual figures. Overall, I will briefly mention, members will be aware that recently the waste trial has started. I think it's far too early to bring any meaningful data to this committee at this moment. We put a little bit of information in around those things that I know a lot of members get contact about, which is Miss Binns, and there's been no negative impact on Miss Binns' performance since the 4-day week was introduced there. But we will bring a more substantive report to this committee when we've got that meaningful data. Overall, what the data shows in terms of the trial for the 4-day week is that for the office-based trial, which is continuing at the moment, retention has improved, recruitment's improved, health and well-being has improved, whilst performance has been at least maintained, and our projected costs due to agency staff covering vacancies has reduced. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Jeff. Just before we go to questions, if I can invite Councillor Richard Stobart to introduce himself and if there are any declarations of interest you need to make.
Chair, thank you. And apologies for lateness, traffic on the A10. Forgive me. I'm Richard Stobart. I'm one of the councillors for the Girton ward, which includes the villages also of Dry Drayton and Madingley.
Thank you. And any declarations of interest to make?
No declarations I need to make.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So members, thank you. Members, thank you. And thank you, Jeff. Any questions from members? Thank you. Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I have a series of clarification questions and then comments on the report. Would you like me to do that all together or take them in stages?
Jeff, what would you prefer?
It might be helpful to take them in stages, if that's okay.
I'll do a few and then pause, Chair, if that's okay. So I'll start off on page 7. It says, refers to a range of organisations. Could we know if they are like-for-like organisations, as in public authorities? On the staff turnover reducing, can we ask what that's compared to? Because it says since the start of the trial, but if we could have a comparison. It says 97 new members, but we don't have the figures from how many people recruited the first year. I appreciate that I have, outside this meeting, been given a copy of the explanation of a hard to fill. I would note that it doesn't actually reference any timescales where we've tried to recruit, which I think is not great. But 97 new members of staff, how many new members of staff do we have the previous year to compare that to? Because as we know, there is turnover. When we have the sickness reduced by 33%, does that take into consideration that officers are working 20% less of the time? So on your day off, where traditionally if you're ill on a Monday and it's your day off, you won't be ringing in to say you're sick. So has there been a 20% reduction? And if not, then obviously we're looking at 13%. And we can see from the waste trial that it's already 4%. And so it's actually, if it's not having a provision put in it for the reduced working hours, then it's not really a comparative figure. In relation to the number of agency staff, the 23 to the 9, are any of those proposed roles to be phased out? I've got 2 more on this bit, Chair. On the projected net cost, when those calculations and those saving calculations have been made, is that just salary costs compared to agency, or is that including pension costs and employer NI as well? obviously that would make quite a big difference. You know, pensions quite often like 13% in local government, so that would make a big difference, which we don't have to pay for agency. And on those KPIs, the ones that are reported here, now the council has a lot more KPIs than the ones that are being looked at. How have they been selected, and how many are based on quantity of output, and how many are based on quality of the output? That's all I've got some on the other pages, but I've left it at that page to start with, Chair.
Thank you. So I counted 7 queries there, and I think we may need to, well, I might need to come back with you because I've made notes that have gone along. Yeah, I imagine you do. So, Jeff, I think the first one was to do with comparisons with like-to-like organisations.
Indeed, if it's all right, Chair, what I'll need to do is answer some of these questions and then refer to my colleague Chloe Whitehead to answer some of the questions around the retention. The range of organisations compares us to both public and private sector, so it's not just public sector organisations. I can talk about the agency costs. The comparison is with is the agency salary costs compared to our salary costs plus on costs. That was done, I think, if you're referring to the email exchange we had, what we did was total the salary costs and add a percentage on. We hadn't at that stage broken it down post by post, which I'd needed to do now, because people have been asking about that. Sorry, what was it about the 9 agency?
Sorry, Councillor Williams.
Yes, so, and just on the response that's given, so you're saying that 776 is now based on the post calculations, or is that still with the percentage, just on what you were saying?
That's still a percentage. If we break it down to individual posts, the savings go up, but only by about £9,000. It doesn't make a great deal of difference.
Okay, and I think you skipped about the 97 new members on the list. What was the one for the previous year?
I'm going to have to refer some of the rest to my my colleagues and then come back perhaps to the KPI figures. Can I refer to Chloe Whitehead, please? Chloe, are you in a position to answer some of these questions?
Thank you, Jeff. I will do my best. I'm afraid I did miss some of the questions, so I might have to ask you, Councillor Heather, to clarify some of them. The one on the 97 new members of staff, that was comparing the 9-month period immediately pre-trial to the 9 months of the trial that we've had up to this point. So that's from April 2022 to the end of December. We have successfully recruited 97 new members of staff from January to the end of September 2023. Were there any other questions you wanted to refer to me, Jeff? Or?
There was a question about sickness, Chloe, with the calculation of the reduction in sickness. Did that take into account the fact that people were working 1 less day during the week?
I'm afraid, Jeff, off the top of my head, I can't actually remember. So if it's okay with you, I will have to go and check how the figures were calculated and get that information back to you.
Thank you, Chloe. I guess, Councillor Heather Williams, what I'm asking is some of these responses will need to be made in writing afterwards if they're not available now.
Okay, but on the 97 members, new members of staff, I was asking how many people we recruited the previous year. We have no comparison for that figure. So if that could be noted in what was requested. And we also have about the phasing out of the agency staff that was put in and how the KPIs were dealt with. That hasn't been covered yet, Chair.
Jeff, are you able to mention how the KPIs were selected?
I believe that those cover all of our KPIs. If Councillor Williams saying that's not the case, I'll have to go back and check with our policy and performance team, who told me that was our KPIs, not our business case figures, just the KPI figures. But I was told by policy and performance that's the full lot.
So we're saying to run the whole organisation, that's just the KPIs, or I thought these were the public ones that we get to see, but actually officers and the council has a lot more KPIs.
Oh, right.
Do you see what I mean?
Sorry.
If that's the if we only have that fewer KPIs to be running this council, that is very concerning.
Yeah.
Councillor Heather Williams, sorry, Jeff, can I just qualify? I'm mindful, and again, my memory might be misremembering, but from our previous Employment and Staffing Committee, these were the KPIs that we were looking at, and we asked for some more feedback on. So I agree, we have a lot more KPIs in the council, but these are the ones specifically that Employment and Staffing were looking at from the last meeting.
Yes, indeed, and also the Scrutiny and Overview Committee report. But you're right, we certainly do have a lot more management information. It was agreed that what would be reported was the public KPIs, but I can, for the next report, I can include more management information that more granular. Are there any particular services that you're interested in, Councillor Williams?
Chair, if I may respond at this point, obviously I do still have further clarification from the rest of the report. I think it's important, particularly later on when you go through, because essentially if we're only looking at the ones that we're seeing, there's a lot of other things that are going, sorry, my poppy just fell off, a lot of other things going on, and actually we're not getting the full picture of the organisation as a whole. So actually we should be looking, even if you're not detailing each one by one, but out of all of the KPIs that the council has, how many are reduced, how many are improved, how many are stagnant, because at least then we have a reflection of how everybody is responding and how the whole organisation is, rather than just a select few, because a select few might not give a full picture.
And again, Councillor Williams, I just go back to the fact these are the things that Employment and Staffing Committee were asking about. And just before I go on to your other questions, I'd like to invite Councillor Anna Bradman to make a comment or ask a question.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to point out that these KPIs were agreed at the very commencement of the 4-day week trial. They were agreed as we went into the planning session, the first 3 months, October, November, December, and they were agreed as being useful KPIs to keep to monitor as we went through the trial session and then, the preparatory phase and then into the trial. So I'm sure if others were deemed to be useful, then we could look at adding them in, but that's to be discussed and agreed.
Can I just ask, are there any other members that have any questions or comments before I go back to Councillor Heather Williams? Yes, Councillor Richard Stobart.
Chair, I have a few comments. Should I just run through them and then you can sort out how best to answer? I think the figures tell one story, which is a massive increase in productivity, which I think is learning from the 4-day week experience suggests that it is possible to achieve these very substantial increases in productivity. And I think we're discussing things around the edge of that. So this 20%, and in fact you could formalise it in different ways, but it's 20 to 25% improvement in productivity. So in that sense, it's huge. We've been debating issues of productivity in this country for a long time. And the promise of IT and improved methods of working have remained in the background, but this is a clear example of what can be achieved. But I'm wondering if, aside from the numbers, we're gathering the anecdotes and the stories, because they are, in a sense, as compelling. They're not quantitative, but they speak of people's experience. And I think it's vital that we capture that alongside the numbers. So the numbers are very important. They're the final arbiter of what we're doing, but the anecdotes, the experiences, actually tell the story of how this was achieved, and I think it's very important to capture that. I know in previous discussions, I remember Chief Executive saying that one of the ways in which document preparation has improved is by, and some groups have done this, I don't know how widespread it is, but by taking a different view of the drafting process and not going for perfection, but going for what is a good, sensible working document, and then having a group activity to put the finishing touches and things like that, which are very important as a way of communicating through the organisation and outside. So I would suggest that we should be adding to the numbers with a portfolio of those experiences, summarised in quotations and little stories that can be told. That was my first point. Second is, I was wondering over the continuing contribution of the Bennett Institute to the handling of the data, and whether Bennett Institute were planning any publications, scholarly works, if you will, around the numbers that are being gathered, but also, again, around those softer aspects of the experience, which, of course, is what's touching on staff morale and issues like mental and physical health. And then finally, I think we did have just a brief discussion of the linkages with other organisations, but it would be great to hear of, in a sense, that co-working, if you will, with institutions, and are we contributing to the broader debate on the 4-day week and how its implementation is proceeding, and yeah, sharing that experience and joining, if you will, the 4-day week community.
Thank you, thank you. Jeff, did you want to make any comments on the second points about the Bennett Institute and the other organisations?
Yes, indeed. First of all, on the stories being captured, yes, you're right. That's really important. And we've got on our intranet, we've got a section for people, colleagues, to capture their experience the 4-day week, things that have gone well, and identify any areas where they think things haven't gone as well. There's also a page for members of the public to put any comments they've got around the 4-day week. And of course, if it's likely to progress, if the trial continues to be successful, there'll be a consultation that goes out to residents. As far as the Bennett Institute is concerned, my understanding is that they will be publishing a report at the end of the trial. They haven't got any plans to publish any reports in the interim. Whether they're going to publish any scholarly works in relation to this, I'm afraid I can't speak for them. I'm sorry, what's the third point?
It was about co-working.
Co-working with other organisations. We've had a lot of interest, but our focus has very much been on delivering for our residents and our businesses. But we're being very public with all of the documents that we have. They're all available on our website. People are able to access them, including the reports from the Bennett Institute. So that's available for other people. If you're asking whether being involved in consultations around the 4-day week or workshops around the 4-day week, no, we haven't been. We've been focused very much on delivering it internally for our residents.
Chair, through you, thank you for the answers.
Just come back to, sorry, Councillor Sunita Hansra, did you have some questions?
Thank you, Chair. I just need to understand the question about sick leave, because if somebody goes off sick on a day, it's just the same as if they were working a 5-day week. That's my understanding. And then it's up to HR to look and see if there's a pattern of sick leave or such like. There are rules about sick leave I expect in the council as there are in the health service. So I don't quite understand the question.
And Councillor Williams, are you coming back on that question anyway to explain what your question is? Yeah, sure. Okay.
So I'll clarify that. So the issue of sick leave, and I think actually what would have been a good comparison, and I'm sure can be achieved, is for us to know previously how many days a week we lost per calendar day. Because if somebody now has a day off on a Monday and they were ill, they won't necessarily be reporting in because they're not working that day. So they wouldn't report in that they are sick. So, of course, if you're doing like for like, well, if you've got people working 20% less of the time, naturally you're going to get at least what you'd expect, 20% less of the sickness leave, because they won't be reporting in that manner if it's looked at in that way. That's why I'm asking for clarification as to how it's been calculated, because there are lots of variables which mean that it potentially wouldn't be reliable to look at. Equally, other organisations, and it'd be good to know if this organisation is the same, sickness tends to be higher on a Monday or a Friday. I'm passing no comment as to why that is, but that is the trend. we know that most officers have a Monday or a Friday off. So if there wasn't a provision made for the reduced hours, or for that, then I would expect the sickness to drop considerably, because actually people aren't working on those days. So it all depends on how it's being managed, and I didn't feel the report covered that. So that's hopefully an explanation for yourself as to why I'm saying, how do we know that's simply not just a reduction because of the reduction in hours worked and the particular days of the week?
If I could just come in before we move on from that, and I guess something else we can't measure is how less likely somebody is to become ill because they've got more time, their well-being is affected. So there's, I agree, there's lots of variables in there, and it's not going to be an easy thing necessarily to measure. I guess that's where the well-being scores come in, and staff are repeating they're feeling better. So thank you for that. If you want to move on now, Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you. So just on page 8, it says about the ongoing year-long trial, but obviously it's going up to March, so it's beyond a year. So I just thought that needed clarifying, and obviously for the waste crews, they will have done 6 months by the end. That's providing, of course, it doesn't get further extended, as there wasn't a guarantee given that it wouldn't be at Cabinet. And we can see on page 10, on the sickness leave, that the waste... No, can I finish? I've already taken a significant interruption, Councillor Bradnam.
Some of the page references don't seem to be tallying up. I think that's what Councillor, and if we can have some time for other members to find where you're going.
I will slow down, Chair.
Yes, please. Could you just go back?
Page 10.
Page 10
The
on...
last sentence shows that there is a reduction in sickness levels of slightly over just 4% in the waste crews. So obviously, and we would expect as well that as we're coming out of the pandemic, some levels to reduce on the comparisons. So I'm just wondering how that's been appreciated and brought into those figures. Also, on page, I'm trying to really slow it down here, Chair, page 11, the second to last paragraph, it says about the 21 responses they have so far, 10 respondents selected the 4-day week as a reason they chose council, and 5 were in hard-to-fill roles. Hard to fill, as was the explanation given to me, is where there's a national shortage or where it's a particular skill set. But on that basis, probably nearly every job could be classed as hard to fill beyond a certain level. And that's why I said I'm disappointed that in the hard to fill, it's not about the fact that we've advertised, say, 3 times or a 6-month advertisement. But it does seem like a lot's gone through for 5 hard to fill spaces in there, and that didn't quite tally with what else was said. On page 12, this is my opinion that you're right, the parameters were set that at least as good a service from the council as before they started. I think for something that is so dramatic as the 4-day week, residents would expect more than at least good service. So that's very disappointing that that was set as a parameter. At the bottom of page 12, it goes on to say that there have been 12 improved, 2 unchanged and 5 reduced. Then, below that, it says, of those that reduced, all but 1 showed a reduction of less than 5%. Changes of +5 or -5 are usual in any set of KPIs due to the factors mentioned above. Why do we have an explanation as to the reduced KPIs, but not of the improved KPIs? And I think that's an imbalance in the report. So how many of those 12 KPIs are within this 5% margin of error? And I think the fact that we're having one reported and not the other is not as open and transparent as we would like to make sure people on all sides of the debate have useful information. On that same notion, on page 13, we talk about the reduction of complaints to 2.5%, but surely that would equally be within that 5% margin as well.
Can I just stop you there, Councillor Gomez? I'm mindful there's an awful lot of questions here, and I think we need to ensure that there's time given for written responses as well as verbal responses today.
Chair, with the greatest respect, you didn't come back to me last time.
I'm mindful, Councillor Heather Williams, you're substituting here today. We found that out earlier on, just as you walked in today. There are an awful lot of questions, and I'm mindful that members may also have questions. I'm grateful that you've subbed today, but I also think we need to ensure...
Point of information, Chair. Point of information. When somebody is substituting, they're assuming the role of that committee place. They are in no way any different to a committee meeting while they sit at that table. And to refer to them as a simple substitute or not in an equal part, and the fact that I was a late-minute substitute is of no consequence to my ability and my rights as a member of this panel.
Thank you, Councillor Wins, but I'm also minded there is an awful lot of information that you're asking for, and other committee members might have also had those questions to ask as well. Thank you for your questions, and what I'm saying to you is I'm mindful that the very first one that you asked at the beginning here, because I hadn't found the page that you're referring to, I don't want to miss that, so I want to go back to that as well. So thank you for your questions, but I also think we need to take them in a way that they can be answered as fully as possible now, but also that there will be some written answers, I believe, required as well. So, can I go back to the very first question of this second section that you had? I think you were referring to page 8. Have you got that noted? Could you go back to that one as well? And then we will go back to Councillor. I don't need you to go through it all again. It was just the first one, and then I'll go to Jeff to answer some of those, but also with that opportunity to have some written responses as well. Because like you, I picked up some of those nuances with the plus and the minus. So yes, would you like to go back to your very first comment from the second set of questions?
Page 8, year-long trial. For office-based staff, it will be longer than a year.
Do you refer to which paragraph you're looking at on page 8?
The top of the page, the very first
line. Thank you, that's helpful to know. It's at the top of the page. Thank you.
Very first line. A year-long trial. It will have been, actually, because we've had trial creep, because originally it was 3 months, then it was an additional 12 months, it will be longer than a year, and for waste crews, it will be less.
So, excuse me, one moment.
Point of order. It never was that.
Point of information, not point of order.
The point was, it was always set up as a trial over 3 months. It was a preparatory period for 3 months, and then a trial period for 3 months with a prospect that it would carry on as a trial for a further period if the results indicated that would be a reasonable thing to do. The other thing I wanted to raise with you was you said that Cabinet confirmed the trial would not be extended. That's not what they agreed.
Point of personal
Cabinet
explanation is not
they
what
would
I
not
said.
extend the trial
Personal
without
explanation.
consultation.
Thank you, members. I'm just going to pull this together. I think what we can see here is this 4-day working week. There's been a timetable, and whether or not we say when the trial started, whether it was agreed that it would continue for 12 months. And we are now at that stage where we're receiving lots more information. So if I could come to Jeff, would you like to respond to...
I said personal explanation.
Thank you, Councillor Heather Williams. Would you like to explain?
Thank you. So what Councillor Bradnam just said, it misrepresents what I said. I said that Cabinet would not give us a guarantee that the trial would not be extended. And I can provide the video evidence of that if Councillor Bradnam wishes to see it.
You said the Cabinet, your words were, the Cabinet confirmed that the trial would not be extended. And
no, I said that they would not give a guarantee that it would not be extended.
Thank you. We'll have a recording available, obviously, that we can all listen to. So I'm now going to go to Jeff and see if he can answer some of those questions that you've already posed.
On the first question about the ongoing year-long trial, there was an initial 3-month trial, then we moved to a year-long trial, and it's that I'm referring to in that paragraph when I talk about the ongoing year-long trial. A number of the other points that you've raised, Councillor Williams, seem to either be points rather than questions or requests for information. So we're capturing those requests for information and we'll provide you with a written response. Some of it will need our HR team to go in and interrogate the computer system to get the accurate information that you want.
Thank you, Jeff. And I would welcome some more clarification of those hard-to-fill posts. As you say, are they to do with the actual role? Is it to do with the fact that they were advertised for length of time?
I can answer that now, actually. Hard to fill. Let me try and remember. Councillor Williams did give the definition, but if I just remind myself of what it is. Generally, when people talk about hard-to-fill posts in the HR perspective, we're describing positions that are difficult to recruit for, either because they require very specific skills or experience, or because there's not enough qualified candidates. Now, in terms of this council, it potentially relates to planners, planning compliance officers, some other roles in the planning service, environmental health officers, project managers, business analysts, and HGV drivers. It is important because actually those are traditionally hard to fill posts. I mean, you can be lucky, and the first time you go out to recruit on one of those traditionally hard to fill posts, you might actually appoint someone. So it's not based upon how quickly you happened to appoint for one particular post. It's just posts that are recognised nationally as being particularly hard to fill. I think universally planners are the classic example that's used for the public sector. There's a national shortage of planners. There's almost sort of a joke that a planner can get a map of Britain, put a pin in it with their eyes closed, go to that place and get a job because they're in such high demand. Because we're in competition not only with other local authorities, of course, but with the private sector and big national sort of infrastructure developments like HS2 that need to employ a lot of planners. So they're particularly hard to fill. Now, we have been lucky over the trial for some of those traditionally hard to fill roles. We've been able to go out and get a lot of applicants. I was talking to a colleague in the planning department the other day, and they were telling me, as I say, I think I mentioned earlier on, some of our neighbours are having to add extra incentives to attract planners because they're just not getting applicants for their jobs. Whereas actually our planning department now is receiving a lot of applications and good quality applications. I think 14 of the original list of posts that were covered by agency staff were in the planning department, and those have all now been recruited into. When I got the latest bit of information from our planners, we don't have any vacancies that are being covered by agency, apart from a couple that are separately funded, where people are paying to particularly have agency people coming in. And that's a really big step forward, particularly with the challenges that we as a council face in terms of growth. So there's been some really positive things around recruitment, particularly into those hard-to-fill posts. It's going to be interesting to see as we move into the trial for the waste-based services, whether one of those other areas around HGV drivers that have been difficult to recruit into, see whether we see the same effect there. So there's a lot of fascinating information coming out of the trial, and there's still a lot to learn from it, I think.
Thank you, Jeff. I mean, I was particularly pleased to see that this report, or the reports to employment and staffing, when we come on to item 7, HR recruitment, retention, absence data, the amount of applications that have been received for posts. Again, I think it would be good to have some comparison with, can we compare that with previous periods. And yes, I just think it would be helpful to have that information. That we've got the definition of what's hard to fill, but also have vacancies that have been left unfilled for a long time, not necessarily filling the hard to fill category because they don't meet that definition. Thank you. Councillor Williams, could you give me an idea of how many other queries or questions you have or comments you have at the moment? Okay, so I'm happy to take those, and then also to put in that there may well need to be written responses to those as well. So again, if you could refer to the page number and the paragraph, that would be really helpful.
Yes, perhaps on the difficulty paragraphs in planning, we have the numbers given to each paragraph. You may want to look at that when the agenda's put together, Chair.
Thank you, and that is something that is going to come up later on when we're looking at one of the reports, so thank you for mentioning that.
So, on page 13, the paragraph above the bolded reduced cost of agency covering vacant posts, it does say variations in performance will happen whether or not a 4-day week trial is in operation. It then goes on underneath the reduced costs and agency covering vacant posts. It says a potential reduction, and I give emphasis to the word potential. And then when we look at page 15, the bottom 3 paragraphs, the report itself makes it very clear that we cannot assume that some of the positive things that have been put in the report are actually as a result of the 4-day week. It can be suggested, but it's very clear in those paragraphs that it can give indication but cannot be reliably guaranteed on. And I stress that because there's a tendency to look at this and go, oh, look, isn't everything marvellous? And actually, it could be other things. It could be ways of working. This trial has happened at the same time that the way of working has completely changed. So how do we know it's one or not another? And I think there is a fundamental flaw in the way that it is being looked at, in that we're not making those comparisons and we don't have the right data, right reliable data in my view. I agree, anecdotal things are important. But what we can see is that when anecdotal things have been given in the past, this council has asked for the removal of those in reports. And you can huff, and you can sigh, and you can yawn, but that is the reality. So anecdotal stuff, great, but it cannot be cherry-picked by this council and have independent reports from the Bennett Institute. To be honest, I will not trust potentially what is in front of me after what has gone on.
Councillor Heather Williams, I'm going to stop you there. I didn't hear any
Nothing
huffing.
I have said is unfactual.
I didn't hear any huffing and puffing.
Please can I
ask you, do you have a question to ask now that can be answered? And if not, it can't be answered now, it'll be answered in writing. There's, as we've had information earlier on of saying that we're now 11 months in, we will be able to not talk about projections. I'm really looking forward to the next report that comes to employment staffing. Do you have a question to ask now?
The committee is not just here to ask questions.
We've had comments, Councillor Heather Williams, we've had lots of comments. Okay, could you then please round up your comments, and if you've got any further questions, please ask them.
I think that a lot of work needs to be done on the data to make it reliable and to make it something that is substantial. The only thing that can be drawn from this report is that the 4-day week cannot conclusively be told is successful for the outcomes that have happened. That is the only thing that is certain in this report, and members should be mindful of that.
Thank you for sharing your opinions with us, Councillor Heather Williams. We all have a number of opinions. What I would really like to ask members, and I touch on what you're saying anecdotally, I think we have a responsibility to gauge with officers and to ask them questions. And I think maybe if we all took on that responsibility to be able to feed some information back before the next meeting. Thank you, Jeff, for mentioning the opportunities for residents to comment as well. And I would welcome some of that information being collated for the next meeting. Sorry, Councillor Richard Stober, I think you had a question or a comment to make.
Chair, thank you. Yes, in reference to just that last discussion, of course, we've been often looking at what I call seasonal variations or external factors. And I think it just behoves us to look at those external factors and their effects. I think this falls into the remit of the more detailed analysis that the Bennett Institute is doing. And yeah, the scientists and engineers, of course, this extraction of external factors and understanding whether what you've done is actually influencing the outcome as opposed to some external factor is crucial. So the techniques are all there, and I think the data gathered is very rich, and I think we could add, if it's not already in the brief of the Bennett Institute, that extra analysis which says, let's separate out the effect of truly external factors to see what the effect of internal arrangements around the 4-day week have actually produced. So I think the analytical process is in place, and we can expect and perhaps even ask, underline the request to the Bennett Institute to make sure that is done. Yeah.
Thank you, that's noted, thank you. Councillor Sunita, did you have another question or comment?
Thank you. I just wondered, when you say hard to fill posts, were they actually covered by agency staff before you did? And if so, did any of those agencies take on permanent job with you when the 4-day week was announced?
I can answer some of that now. I can answer some of that now, and I'll have to come back with some of that information. Yeah, of those posts that were covered by agency in July 22, when we did the first snapshot, 14 were ones that we would consider to be hired to fill. Of course, all the others, the fact that they were covered by agency staff means that there have been difficulties in recruiting into those posts, but they weren't ones that sort of met that definition I told you about earlier on. So certainly we've recruited into 14 of those. The rest I'll have to ask Helen to get the information and write to you with the answer about, because that's about whether agency have moved in to fill some of our permanent posts. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So members, we're invited to note this report. We've had an in-depth discussion, and yet there are some more things to answer. So thank you for noting those, and look forward to reading the responses. So members, can I take it that we've noted this report? Agreed. Agreed. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Okay, members, we now move on to item 5 on the agenda, the resolution, policy and toolkit. Officers are seeking to replace the old grievance policy with a new resolution policy and an accompanying employee toolkit. And this committee is being asked to signal our approval for officers to proceed with the policy change. I notice that joining us online we have Emma Weston, HR advisor, and thank you, Emma, for presenting this report to us.
Thank you, Chair. So myself and a colleague, Bethan Gregory, who's also a senior HR advisor, have worked to produce the resolution policy in place of the grievance policy. The key highlights, I won't go through the whole report, is to bring the policy up to date with ACAS Code of Practice, as the current policy is not in line, to look at a best practice solutions focused approach, and to outline a clearer process for employees to follow when they do have an issue to raise. We've also produced an accompanying toolkit, which is included in the report, to support employees as they go through the process. We have looked at producing a flowchart, which is included in the report, although the flowchart isn't in the report, so that's an addition to be added at a later date. I'm happy to receive any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Jordan, did you want to make any comments to this before we go to questions?
No, I think the report talks, yes, I do.
Thank you. So members, any comments, any questions on the policy and toolkit? Councillor Anna Braddon.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome this as a very neat, it's important that people try to resolve their concerns and issues, rather than go through a sort of adversarial approach, which grievance tried not to be, but often was. So I'm very keen that we should be working in this way, in a very much more collaborative way, to resolve issues between members of staff and whoever they're having an issue with. So I think it's very positive. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you. So I'm actually looking at the linked grievance policy itself, and 11.0 on confidentiality of proceedings. I'm just wondering how this is going to be balanced. I welcome a revised policy on this, but I am aware of a case at the council where a member of the planning department reported somebody for how they felt. I'm not going to say they were being bullied, but they felt bullied. And part of the process was then that person that they'd raised the complaint about was told. And actually, that's not always the best solution to happen, because that person then felt actually very, very vulnerable once they knew that their manager had been informed of their complaint. So how are you going to balance within this policy supporting the person that's raised the complaint, whilst also taking approach and making the person aware? Is it necessary for, if someone's been told there's a complaint about them, to know who the complainant was, or is that something that can be managed within this policy as it's revised?
Thank you, thank you. Chloe, are you able to respond to that question? Oh, sorry, Emma. Sorry, I'm going to Emma and my Chloe mixed up.
Okay.
4 letters.
So it's in the best scenario, obviously we wouldn't share confidentiality, but in some circumstances, depending on the detail of the complaint or the issue, there are identifiable elements that may prevent confidentiality in those situations. What we have got is an assessment meeting after a complaint is received, and in that meeting it can be identified the best route to provide a solution or look at solutions which are viable in that situation. So it would be on a case-by-case basis as to the best route to remedy the situation.
Thank you. Councillor Heather Williams.
That's good to hear. I'm just wondering if part of the process actually what ultimately led this person to leave and what upset them is the person was told without their knowledge and then approached them to discuss about it. So I think the person that's complained, if you do need to disclose who it is, perhaps they should be told so they can be prepared for that, as obviously it didn't go very well in that situation.
Thank you. And yes, thank you, Emma. I mean, I'm interested to ask, the idea of this being solution focused sounds, very, very positive and welcoming. And I guess it's very much needs to be taken on a case by case basis. And I'm just looking at the way things are numbered here and trying to, I'm hoping it isn't a situation that you work your way through the numbers as such, or the numbered interventions, that it is done on that case-by-case basis. Yeah, thank you.
That's correct.
Yeah, and there's just a comment, I think that my colleague here, Councillor Anna Bradnam, made, it might be helpful in the document if there's some cross-referencing between the numbers on the resolution procedure on page 26 and then how the things are itemised following. So what is an assessment meeting? That correlates with 2A, so if that's possible to add in. I tried to click on the hyperlinks that are in the document. The one that explained the differences between mediation and facilitated conversation, that's page 27, that went through straight to a Word document. However, the one in the bottom line, click here for information on coaching, that seemed to take me back to Councillor Online, and I couldn't access it, so I don't know if there's if that could just be looked at.
Apologies, that's a hyperlink to our intranet, and I think with the move from one to the other, I think the links got lost, so I will look at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Councillor Richard Stobart.
Chair, thank you. So a few minor questions, but I'd just like to endorse the point that Councillor Bradnam made about moving away from an adversarial model to a cooperation model for grievance resolution. Now, wrapped up in this, and Councillor Williams referred to this, is around harassment and bullying, where managers are involved. This is deeply difficult, and it would be reassuring, and I think Emma has clarified that a manager might not be informed if it was going to make for a difficult situation. Now, I just had on the workings of the policy a few questions. I understand that in the assessment meeting and in the follow-up, it is possible for the person involved to call in a colleague. Now, that would be a work colleague, I assume. But it could be also a work colleague who's a union representative as well. Now, is that always the case, that the person who's kind of lodging the request can call in somebody to, as it were, sit with them and listen to the proceedings? Yeah.
Emma.
So as part of the policy, I believe it's in the toolkit, it does detail that the right to be accompanied is throughout the process, and that would be described as a current work colleague or a trade union representative.
Okay. Chair, may I continue? Thank you for the reply, Emma. Thank you. Speed is also important in resolving this, and I think there are some mentions of speed of resolution, but I think it's important. It would be important to know that, or we could ask the question: is there wrapped up in this a notion of quick resolution? Now, I know things sometimes take a little time to organise meetings and so on, But to reach a quick resolution is very important for the morale and the, perhaps even the mental health of individuals involved. So is there a notion of speed and how that can be monitored?
Thank you. I note, Emma, that there are some timings mentioned in terms of, but are you able to respond to Councillor Stobart's query there?
Of course, it's always the intention of the HR team and supporting colleagues of issues that are raised to have a speedy response. As you mentioned, there are some time constraints within the toolkit which detail a time frame which we'd expect to either conclude an investigation or have meetings. But it really would depend on the issue at hand as to how easy or how quick it is to respond to any issues that are raised. So yes, the intention is to always resolve issues as quickly as possible, but it would depend on the nature of the issue as to how quickly that could be. Thank you.
Councillor Stobart.
Chair, thank you, and thank you to Emma for that reply. So one more thing, if I may. Who will maintain oversight of the process and its effectiveness? And as the new procedure comes into play, what kind of data will we expect to see at this committee?
Thank you. Emma?
At present, I would have to take away to look at the most effective way to monitor the policy. I don't have a planning place. However, other policies that we've launched, we do ask for colleague feedback to ensure that it's working for everybody. And I would suggest that would be a good approach for this policy as well.
Chair, thank you, and thank you to Emma.
Thank you. Members, I don't see anybody else with any hands up to ask any questions. So we are being invited to, we have two options: to approve the new STAR resolution policy and toolkit to progress to union discussion and colleague feedback. Or option two is to review the existing grievance policy and update in line with current employment law legislation and ACAS best practice. What I think I'm hearing from this discussion is I propose that we're in the position to approve the new STAR resolution policy and toolkit to progress to union discussion and colleague feedback. Is that agreed? Yes. Agreed. Thank you. Thank you very much, Emma. Thank you for the report, and look forward to hearing the feedback. Just checking I haven't missed a number, because I guess here we are. We're on to item 6, bottom of the agenda page, the fertility treatment policy. So this item 6, the officers are seeking to introduce a fertility treatment policy and an accompanying manager toolkit, and the Employment and Staffing Committee is being asked to signal our approval for officers to proceed with the introduction of the policy. Emma, we're back to you, unless John wanted to say anything beforehand.
I just want to say that I'm very pleased that we're ahead of the game here, that we're doing this ahead of the second reading of the bill in Parliament, and I'm delighted and thank the officers very much for this.
Indeed, thank you, John. Emma.
Thank you, Councillor. So as John just highlighted, we are trying to take a very proactive approach on this. So we've looked at the policy and looked at ways that we can support employees undergoing a very difficult time. So to highlight, we are looking at offering 30 hours paid time to undertake appointments and to offer a flexible working around appointments, which fits in with our hybrid practice. And to also raise awareness company-wide as well to support employees that are undergoing treatment, that feel that they're able to talk up and speak to colleagues and hopefully create quite a supportive network where they feel comfortable to share their experiences internally. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Emma. Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you, Chair. As many members know, this is something that is very personal to myself, and I am very pleased that the bill is coming through and government have listened to people that have been through the process like myself, and very happy that the council is doing this. There are many things I could go into and say on this, but there was just a few things, and I I do not assume that I'm the only person potentially in this room that's done this process, but I'm going to speak openly that I have. And there are a few things that I think would be important to potentially include in the toolkit about supporting people when they go through this. And indeed, I act as somebody through members of the public or people from the council or beyond, as someone that they do come to and speak to and about things, because they obviously publicly know that I've done it. The most important thing, and it got touched on, but I think it needs strengthening in the toolkit for managers, is around when you know someone's gone through a cycle, everybody around you is very excited for you. I don't think what they appreciate that actually the success rate is very, very low. You're very fortunate if you get through in 3 cycles, is the average. You will know normally 10 days, but sometimes sooner after implementation, whether it's been successful or not. And that wait is incredibly tough. But equally, when a round hasn't succeeded and people ask, oh, so how are you getting on? And asking how you're getting on, for you, it's the only conversation. But for that person, they will have had that conversation with family, with their partner, with friends. It is hell. And what I wasn't sure from the report was, it says that pregnancy is recognised from implementation. And then it gives about miscarriage and whether that counts for a failed cycle, because technically we haven't had a viable pregnancy. So whether that policy would then come in, or whether they would need to have like you're not actually classified, sort of, we might recognise someone's pregnant from implementation, but when does that policy come in? Is it after a positive test or not? And I just felt if I was looking at this, going through the process, I wouldn't be exactly clear on that. The other thing is the 30 hours. If you were to, and I appreciate not everybody will have necessarily looked into this as in the way that I have, but in the guidance that's coming through and the bill that's going through, really it's a week. And I would see a week as a 37 hours. I appreciate we're trialling the 4-day week, which would be 30, but equally, not everybody at the councils, our waste crews is doing 32 hours, for example. And I wondered whether, rather than restrict on hours, it should be their working week. So that would future-proof it, whether we go back to 5 days, 4 days, and actually would give people that are going through the process now some certainty about that. Equally, that would make it simpler if you are part-time, because you know that you're going to get that weekly slot, because this sort of says you'll get prorated. It also said about operational staff would have to take annual leave if they couldn't go back to duties for an appointment. And actually, I disagree with that being part of the policy, because I think that's giving an unfair advantage to one section of our staff and not another. And, you know, when you think things like the egg collection, some people can have that done through sort of, I'm trying to think what the appropriate term, because mine wasn't. Mine was the opposite. I had to have general anaesthetic. Some people can have it through, you know, just when you make it, no, not local. No, where you go dozy and you just essentially sleep through it. Sedation, thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. I had to have a general anaesthetic. So obviously the recovery time is different. And I wasn't, when I read through this, I wasn't sure if there was enough emphasis that it is a very personal journey and there will need to be, it says about flexibility, but actually there'll need to be quite a lot of flexibility. And appreciate it's up to 3 cycles. I did 4 cycles. And, you know, and I'm very lucky that I have my little girl now. But I do think that's something that should be explored. Once it's in practice, I get it's a financial risk, but actually that there should be some provision for discretion, that if somebody needs to go for that extra round, that they're not required. Perhaps it can be non-paid leave, but that they're not losing annual leave, because equally, it's not everyone will be doing the same. The journey is very different, and I think the more flexibility that there is, I cannot stress how important that is if you're going through that process. And just don't ask how it's going. I mean, seriously, and let them tell you when they're ready. For me, I didn't tell even my mother-in-law, who I don't think she'll ever forgive me. I think I was sort of 16, 18 weeks. I basically hid at home because there's an element of when's it going to go wrong. And that stays with you quite often through a lot of pregnancy. And we do know that often people get PTSD and more likely to get postnatal depression. So I'm really pleased that we're discussing this. As you can imagine, it's difficult to discuss, but it's important to discuss. And actually, it may be worth, I know when we did the premature neonatal leave policy, I spent time with officers going through how it was having a premature child. And I'm not to say that there'll be more people than just me, but if there are people that are in the organisation that want to talk about their journeys, then you might want to start including them in the process. I think I could talk for hours on this, Chair, with not getting too upset. Yeah, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Councillor Williams, and for sharing your expertise and personal experiences. Can I just come? I mean, I realise it's not right to assume, but any policy like this, there will be ways of sharing it and with colleagues and picking up some of those points that were made. I just would like to refer to page 45. Where it mentions the 30 hours, and again, pick up on what you're saying there in terms of if we could put that into a something that applies across the board. If if the 30 hours is the equivalent of a week, then I'll be saying a week, and then what that would be for part-time staff. But I think in there it does talk about it can, if it goes beyond the 3 cycles there, or use up the 30 hours, then there is flexibility in terms of annual leave or unpaid leave or swapping non-working days. Welcome the fact that that this is going to be seen as very individual. Different people are going to have different needs. So thank you, Councillor Sunita, hands raised. Second microphone, please. Sorry.
I've just a couple of comments to make. Thank you for talking about your personal experience. It's useful to know, but everybody's journey is different, and I agree that sensitivity is required around people who are having this treatment. Then that's a broad subject because some people like to talk about, some don't, and we can't really make a policy about who says what to whom. This is one example where the 4-day week will be really helpful to the member of staff, having that extra day off. In my work experience, we have to balance service needs with personal needs. When I looked at this about operation staff, I agree that there will be a difference between the operation staff and other staff. If the flexibility allows them to work half a day instead of at another time, if they're able to, then maybe they don't need to take it as annual leave. Yeah, that's what I was going to say, so thank you.
Thank you. I think that's what comes across here. I mean, if we put this in the context of the previous document and about relationships, the relationships between managers and staff and being able to have those conversations, it's working towards that supportive environment. Are there any other? Oh, sorry, Councillor Richard Stobart.
Chair, thank you. I'd just like to endorse Councillor John Williams' comment about this being a step really ahead of the legislation. I think it's very important, in selected places perhaps, but for the Council to be, in a sense, class leading on such issues, which are vital to the well-being of the workforce. I'd just like to add something, and I appreciate Councillor Heather Williams' comments. Thank you for sharing that experience. I was just thinking maybe more broadly about the role of partners and partners individuals having fertility treatment elsewhere or partners within this organisation, that it can be difficult for a partner once removed from the situation physically, but actually very tied up emotionally. And I would hope that in this culture of awareness that will grow around this, that partners can equally be supported. I know the demands aren't so great, but emotionally it might be important for that individual to be supported. So I would hope that partners could also feel comfortable to discuss, and I think allowances are made for partners in the arrangements, but yeah, not to underestimate the significance to partners. But of course, I think this policy is really about supporting the individual, and that's the primary aim. So yeah, very warmly welcome it, and the change of culture that's implied, and I hope, yeah, through the manager toolkit, then that awareness grows. There is the related area, of course, of pregnancy loss, which I think is kind of my apologies, but I think that's strongly related, and a culture of openness around pregnancy loss is going to be perhaps one of the extra benefits of an ability to talk this through. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. This was a very emotional topic, and don't apologise, for how this touches all of us. So, should I just give me 1 second?
Should we take a 5-minute break?
Yeah, we could just take a break. Thank you. Thank you, members. So I don't think we have any other questions or, oh, just sorry, one more from Sunita, hand raised.
When an employee comes back after a dreadful event like a miscarriage, does the HR have any means to support them? I mean, do they have an appointment to see HR first?
Emma, are you able to respond to that? An employee returns to work? So I can't hear you at the moment.
Apologies.
No worries.
To my knowledge, we don't have a required appointment for them to on return, because we don't want to assume that they want to speak about what's gone through, but we are always contactable to discuss anything an employee wishes to discuss.
May I suggest that, I mean, this person might benefit from an appointment before returning to work, and to identify means of supporting them. I'm sure there's lots of things on the NHS that you can refer them to, but just to have an event like that, maybe the whole office knows about it, and to go back in there and everybody trying to be discreet about them makes it so obvious, and it's hurtful. It's not the right.
Can I just, I mean, what I'm really mindful of is we've said before that everybody's journey is different, and what I would hope we're building in here is that flexibility that employees will be offered the pathway that suits them, that they get the choice in this, because it's so important to feel that you have some control and perhaps a loss of control. So thank you for there being flexibility, and I think, you know, we can obviously signpost services that are available, and that there are people there that they can talk with. Yeah, thank you. Councillor Heather Williams, did you have another comment?
I was just going to say on that I think it's good to offer, but we can't make things mandatory. Equally, if for some people they want to keep that private and they don't want to disclose that that's what they're going through, actually, you know, I think sometimes you go to work for normality because you're having to deal with that privately, and sometimes doing the two is just too much. So I think we should just, in general, everybody be more aware of people's emotions, and actually you don't know necessarily what's going on in someone's private life, and if you keep that mantra, then you're creating that flexibility. But I wouldn't support anything that became mandatory, because but equally, it might be that actually 6 months later, or 4 months later, that's when the person feels at a place to talk about. So to make sure that your policy is known. So if later on down the line, I remember it was difficult when my daughter was born. It took 4 months till my husband said that it was never happening again. That was it. He was not going through that again. And it took 4 months for him to say how he felt about the process to me. And I think that's because he felt very much he had to, you know, she was in intensive care, I was in intensive care, it was all going on, and he had to be strong through that period. So it can take time. So I think nothing mandatory, and just more awareness of what's available.
I agree totally, and I imagine that is part of the ethos of HR, that the door's open when people want to talk, and so thank you. And Councillor Anna Bradman.
Yes, I think the question that Councillor Hansraj was asking is, do we have a note in the timescale to contact them before they come back to work to offer an appointment if they want one? And I think that's the point. We don't just need to not lose that, so that before they come back, they have contact engendered by the employer to say, how are you? How do you want to handle this when you come back to work? You know, would you like an appointment with us or not? And would you like your colleagues to know or not? You know, is there anything you want us to say or not? And give them the agency.
Emma, are you able to respond to that, if that's built in, that there'll be contact either from HR? I mean, I'm also mindful though that it may well be through a manager as well, just depending on the relationship.
So the process would be a manager-led process, obviously with the employee, the relationship. HR is on hand to support either party, but it would be the manager that would manage the communication and the relationship prior to returning to work, but also as been mentioned, we wouldn't necessarily be aware of why somebody was off. So it would, again, case by case basis and as supportive as possible, ultimately being led by the employee and what they require from us as support. But obviously we do have evolved counselling, employee assistance programmes in place. So if we can't give that support directly, we can signpost to other organisations that are able to provide that support.
Thank you, thank you. So members, we're invited to note this. Thank you. We approve this policy and toolkit. I am mindful, as it's been pointed out in the opening paragraph, that the second reading of this bill will be on the Friday, the 24th of November 2023. And I guess any changes that might need to be made following the bill will be incorporated. But if I could just, with members by affirmation, follow that recommendation. Agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Emma. Thank you for your time. And apologies, Jonathan, for not welcoming you earlier, but I think you're here for the next item on the agenda. Okay, members. We now come to item 7 on our agenda, HR recruitment, retention and absence data. And I said this feels like we're in a sort of HR sandwich, this agenda today, starting off and finishing with that. The data report, it covers June and July, and once again, as a committee, we're being asked to note this report. So welcome, Jonathan, HR advisor. Would you like to present this report? Oh, sorry, no, happy John to go to Jonathan first. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, the data for this report comes from August and September. Just to clarify before I start, just to go through the report, throughout August, the recruitment team advertised for 22 job opportunities and attracted 106 applications. One of the adverts was internal, which was recruited to as a secondment. Throughout September, the recruitment team advertised 8 job opportunities, which attracted 50 job applications. 2 of the adverts were internal and 1 was recruited to and 1 is still being advertised. In August, a customer contact advisor role for transformation was 2 posts. It received 36 job applications and successfully recruited into the 2 posts, which were an internal and external candidate. Similarly, the refuse loader advert received 44 applications, and after 20 people being interviewed, 8 new members of the team were recruited. Gives you an overview of the recruitment activity over the last couple of months. The next part of the report relates to an interviewee survey. This is something new. We sent out a survey in mid-October for roles that were interviewed in July, August and September. We received 21 responses, which is about a 29% return rate. When applicants were asked about why they applied for a role, there's lots of different responses. They had the 4-day-week trial, pay and reward, a career opportunity and local government opportunity were all cited between 9 and 11 times each, so they were the most common responses. A few people also said that pensions and the opportunity to work part-time were reasons for their applications. When looking at the online process for applying for jobs, it was rated as an average of 4.1 out of 5, suggesting that most people had a good overall experience of using the system. And everyone, as a follow-up to that, everyone said that they were confident they had enough information about their role before they came to an interview. So that part of the process seems to be working well. Of those respondents, 4 people suggested the recruitment manager didn't give them sufficient information to make them feel it was a suitable role during their actual interview. One person said that this was related to a conduct of a member of the panel. A couple suggested it was poor communication and not being told they were unsuccessful, and one person withdrew for personal reasons. So it wasn't anything to do with their interview at all. Only 7 people were offered the opportunity to receive feedback about the interview. However, all but 2 respondents would consider applying for the council again in future. One person cited a lack of timely communication about whether they'd been successful, while another person believed they had been shortlisted as a result of their agenda and the interview was too long. Just to give you an update, the new recruitment module of iTrent has been launched, and HR will review how we can incorporate sending out surveys at the end of each month using data from the system to see if we can make it more timely. We also collected data about staff probation, looking at employees' induction experience through a quarterly survey. So this is up to the end of Q3. We received 16 responses out of 33. Almost everyone that responded were positive about the quality of their inductions into the council. All 16 respondents said the 4-day week trial had impacted on their decision to apply and accept their role at the council. Common reasons were health and wellbeing benefits, greater flexibility and the opportunity for agile working being cited less frequently. Only one person said the 4-day week had a negative impact on them due to the reduced time to learn their role and complete their work. However, they did add that this was a personal thing and the 4-day week was a very positive measure overall, and they were complimentary of the fact we were introducing it. A working group has also been set up initially within HR and recruitment team to look at improving induction and onboarding process. To go through unsuccessful recruitment campaigns, the next part of the report, the HR and recruitment team meet with hiring managers when a role is not successfully recruited for the first time. A note is made to collate information and also discuss ways to improve this with the hiring manager. The new HR software module for recruitment was soft launched in September. There are currently 12 roles being processed through it. We're speaking to managers to gain feedback and making improvements to the process. This will allow more comprehensive monitoring of success in relation to recruiting to vacant posts. Data will be extracted from the system for all roles in future, but we're unable to provide further data at this time. We also have the next chart, chart 2, voluntary turnover. The voluntary turnover rate fell slightly in August to 0.6 and then declined again slightly in September to 0.59. There has been a continuation of a trend of a decline in turnover since June 2023. 4 employees accepted a new role with another organisation, 2 left due to having a career break, 1 retired and 1 relocated. Exit interviews took place with all but 3 of voluntary leavers. The feedback from the voluntary leavers was a desire to leave due to a lack of career progression, while 2 others left due to a career break. The HR team always encourages those leaving to share the information with their manager so that we can all seek to make continuous improvement in what we do. On this occasion, slightly less than half wished for an exit interview information to remain confidential within HR. Looking at the next chart, sickness absence data, chart 3 and chart 4, you can see sickness days per FTE, first in shared waste and then in the rest of the council. And then chart 5 shows the percentage of days lost due to sickness within the council. Chart 6 shows the sickness absence days lost within the council and shows a continuation. There's been some fluctuation in the number of days lost, but it is very similar to what was the level in July, the level in September, although there was a peak in August. As seen in chart 6, the cost to the council for sickness absence days lost in August was higher than April to July 2023, but it returned to a comparable level. The HR team are aware of the need for external benchmarking and are currently exploring options to provide this information corporately. We were able to determine from LGA data that from 2021 to 2022 that the absence is a mean of 9.2 days per FTE. Looking at a comparable data set for the last 12 months, the South Cambs District Council data shows that the level of absence excluding shared waste is 6.35 days. And in contrast, the data for shared waste was 13.56 in the same period. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'm sure there'll be some comments and questions for you, so thank you for staying for those. Members, can I invite questions? Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you. I think my question around what buffer and what allowances have been made for reduced working hours, I've obviously covered before. I think it, excuse me, applies again here, but I appreciate if I need a written answer on the last item, I'm going to need a written answer on this one, but just for completeness. The other thing was, and this might just be myself, but I think other members might appreciate as well, on the graphs, whether it be possible to have a line for each year. Because when I'm trying to compare sort of the months, I'm trying to compare the 2 Aprils, I'm kind of having to use my finger. I know you got the line, but actually if we had a line for each year, it may make it a lot easier for people to actually make the comparison. So I think that was something when I was looking at it, obviously because it's all sort of in grayscale as well. I was trying to map it all out, and actually for accessibility as well, having a graph in black and white isn't the easiest thing to do. Some people, because you know we've got dyslexia and what have you, the colours definitely help.
is that something that will be possible, Jonathan, moving forward, to be able to compare things by having sort of delineations and maybe colour?
It would be something we could look at. Would you, just to clarify, would you be looking to divide it up by calendar years as opposed to financial years?
I don't really mind when it doesn't matter if it's calendar, however you break it down, whatever it is, as long as you actually label it correctly as to which is which year. It's just, I think the colours definitely help. And also if it's sort of layered as opposed to how it is, because you've got to try and, because like you say, there are peaks. Any understanding what happened in August? On the
Which chart are you looking at now, Councillor Williams?
Chart 6, are you talking about?
Yeah.
Sorry?
Chart 6.
Chart 6.
We've got a very big peak in August, which I thought most people would be taking holiday. But.
Any information on that, Jonathan?
I don't have the detailed information, but I can take it away and come back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting when looking at patterns and trends, and if we can, I mean, obviously we're comparing things with years which have been very different just before now. So yeah, thank you. Anything else, Councillor Williams? No, thank you. Councillor Richard Stobart.
Chair, thank you. I think this comes over as a very competent piece of work. It's very helpful to have the data, the numbers, the trends. Notwithstanding, some of the comments about data, the ability to tease data apart and look at it. I mean, in this kind of environment, is quite tricky. What we like is for somebody to sit at a terminal and say, look at it this way, look at it that way. I hope there's some scope to do that, although that's more a kind of a personal wish. But digging deeper into the data is getting easier, and it would be helpful, I think, from the point of view of this committee, to be seeing, as opportunity presents itself, more flexible ways of looking at the data. But yeah, I warmly welcome the way it's presented, and look forward to future developments. I just wanted to comment about benchmarking, which I think is really, really important, and underline the importance of like for like. What are the assumptions made by other people who gather data? And so sometimes benchmarking can be fraught with those difficulties, but I think it's a very good thing to do, and allows us comparisons, but needs to be done with some care. And I think that also applies to data coming through the 4-day week analysis, that again, comparisons and sensible comparisons, and one in which the assumptions are being carefully considered and weighed, that would be helpful too. So yeah, fully endorsing benchmarking, but yeah, again, very good presentation of the data. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Jonathan. Can I ask when, and again, apologies if it's my naivety, when we'd next be expected to get a report on recruitment, retention and absence data?
I would expect that we would report on that at the end of Q4.
Right.
The next quarter ends at the end of December,
Yeah.
so we'll be looking to get the information in January. Lovely.
So that'll be in time for our next meeting, which we will pick up that benchmark. So thank you so much. It's a comprehensive report, and I look forward to the next one as well. Members, we are asked to note this report. Can I take that by affirmation? Agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. So that brings us on to the date of our next meeting, which is 1st of February 2024. So we'll have a lot more information there to be reported on. And just if I could just ask Jeff, I imagine we'll have information there from the shared waste service and the way the 4-day week is progressing there. That would be, I think, something committee would welcome. And if there's anything else, if we can feed that through to Jeff, so we've got that in time for that February meeting. Is it too early to wish someone Merry Christmas? I don't know. But thank you, members, and thank you, officers, for the meeting, and look forward to seeing you again after the festive season. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.